convened as of 8:31 a.m. I will respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. Please note the committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial meeting minutes of the meetings, will be posted on as soon as practicable on the board's website. During today's meeting, we are providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who'd like to receive a live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. A live stream of this meeting is also available via the RTD's YouTube page. I would now like to call the order for the committee members. Kathleen Chandler.
Present.
Lynn Geisinger.
Here.
Chris Gutenritter.
Here.
Michael Guzman. Not here. Chris Nicholson.
Present.
And Patrick O'Keefe, I am here. And we do not have any other directors that have joined us.
Here.
Oh,
I'm here.
oh, okay. Matt Larson, I'm sorry. Did I skip you? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Matt Larson is a member of the committee and is also present despite my apparent attempt to make him not so. The first item on the agenda this morning is the selection of the committee chair and vice chair. In my capacity as the chair of the full board, I will facilitate the election for committee chair and vice chair. And once both seats are filled, turn the meeting over to the new committee chair and vice chair. Unlike the executive committee election process, which uses secret ballots for the election of board officers, for committee leadership elections, we'll proceed with open nominations, discussion, and a voice vote by the full committee. We will begin the election with the chair, then select vice chair. We will allow up to 3 minutes for those board members who nominate a candidate, those seconding nominations, and any other members who wish to speak regarding the candidates to speak. I will then call a voice vote in which directors will be asked to state the name of the candidate whom they support. The candidate who receives the majority of the support of the present voting members will be declared the winner, shockingly. If only one director is nominated, the committee may proceed by acclamation, and that director will be appointed. I will start by asking for nominations for committee chair. Are there any nominations? Michael Guzman, Director Guzman.
Thank you, Chair O'Keefe. It is my pleasure and honor to nominate Director Chris Gutenritter to be chair of this committee. He served with integrity last year, worked honestly as a partner, was forthright with all of the directors on the board, not just on this committee. I do believe we created a great working relationship with our general manager CEO, and both of us worked really intentionally together and with former Chief People Officer Charlene Pelleggi to complete the work that we were assigned to do last year. And I do believe that with his countenance and his calm demeanor, he will provide steady and forthright leadership for this committee. He also understands the work that needs to be done. And in that, I submit that nomination for consideration. Thank you.
You're muted.
Thank you, Director Guzman. Do I have a second for the nomination?
Second.
Second.
I got Director Geisinger just a second before that. Would any other directors like to speak? Director Gutenritter.
Yeah, sure. I'd just like to say a little something. Director Guzman, thank you very much for the kind words. As Director Guzman said, last year I was the vice chair of performance, really learned a lot in that role, appreciated serving under him as chair of performance. I think over the year that I've been on the board, I believe that I've shown I'm a good listener, respect everybody's opinion, work diligently to be unbiased, and more or less what you see with me is what you get. And so I think that that transparency can be very valuable in this role. And then lastly, I'll just say that my background is in HR consulting. So I've spent a lot of time at different companies, different agencies, working, consulting on the HR function. Specifically, some of that time, a good deal of that time was focused on performance. So this is an area that I do feel like my professional background contributes to. Thank you for the time, and for your consideration.
Thank you. I think we have Director Rusha who's joined. There she is. There. Sorry. And are there any other nominations? Okay. I would add that I think Director Kuchenrieder is going to be an excellent chair and has brought some very real world experience and was an excellent vice chair last year to Chair Guzman. Having no other nominations being made, I would ask if there's any objection to move to Director Larson.
I'd like to nominate myself.
You are able to do that. Would you like to speak at all on the nomination, not as the nominated?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I have an agenda, I guess, that I want to try to get accomplished in Performance Committee, and that's why I am nominating myself. And I guess if people like my agenda, maybe they'll vote for me. If they don't, I know Chris will do a great job. But what I want to do is I think, make what I view are improvements to the way we do the performance framework and some other aspects. I think that the short-term goals should constitute a larger portion still of the performance rating system. Many corporations, the CEO has no subjective performance goals at all, and I think that we need ridership growth, reliability, and customer experience to be the things that we focus on the most. And with those only being potentially 50% of the framework, I don't think they get as much focus as needed. And I think it would align better with how most large other organizations are run if those important quantifiable goals were a larger portion of the performance framework. I think we should predetermine as much as possible for those short-term goals what the result is in terms of the rating if they're to the extent that they are hit, so that the management can rely on getting rewarded if they hit those numbers, and it's not just a matter of the opinion of the board as to whether or not they hit those numbers. I mean, these are pretty straightforward, quantifiable things, and it should be more automatic than I think it is now. And of course, though, if there are special circumstances that come up, the board can always adjust as necessary. I think we should align the CEO's performance framework and program, particularly as it relates to the short-term goals, with her direct reports. It should be on the same calendar period, which it currently isn't. I have never heard of a setup where the CEO of an organization is compensated on a different time schedule than her direct reports, and I think that should be changed one way or the other. And I think her direct reports should share a large portion of the goals that she is assigned and be rewarded similarly to how she is, or the GM CEO is, according to their achievement or the achievement of those goals. I also would like to try to move towards, and I know, right now there's contractual challenges, but I'd like to try to move more towards a bonus system rather than a raise system, and a system that includes overachievement so that there is a reward for doing better than the goals that are set both for the CEO, and I would like to see those rolled down to the immediate reports of the CEO. And then I'd also like to, I mean, as long as one of the goals is ridership growth, and I think it should be, I think one challenge with that is that the CEO's hands are tied to a large degree in terms of how much she can deliver in ridership growth by the board's approval of service configurations that would increase ridership. So I would like to see us get to a process where we are, as a board, are given multiple scenarios to choose from in terms of ridership growth based on multiple service configurations. And then we would choose the amount of ridership growth that we want to, given that we know, ridership and coverage are probably going to be trade-offs. And more generally, I think all of our service changes that are sort of filtered through the ops committee should quantify the expected ridership growth with each change, so that each of these changes, as they're done, we have a sense of whether or not they're going to increase our ridership or not. At least the best estimate that the service planning department has. So that's kind of the agenda I have, and I would, if people support that agenda, I would I appreciate your vote. I think it's a strong agenda that would really enhance our ability to achieve the goals that I believe we all believe in. But I understand, I think Chris will do a great job, and but that's the agenda I have, and if you support it, I appreciate your vote. Thanks.
So thank you for the nomination and the nominated discussion. Is there a second for this nomination? Mr. Corral, are you?
I'd just like to point out that a second is not required.
Oh, it's not required. Okay.
It's not.
Okay. So we have to, is there any other discussion on this nomination? Director Larson, your hand's up, but I think is it leftover up? Okay, thank you. All right. Back to this with Director Larson and Director Guschenritter having been nominated as committee chair, and opportunities provided to the candidates and their supporters to make respective cases. I will now proceed to call on each committee member in alphabetical order for their vote. As I call your name, please state the name of the nominee you support. Director Chandler.
I support Director Gutenritter. Thank you.
Director Geisinger.
Chris Guchenritter.
Director Guschenritter.
I pick myself.
Always comfortable to say. Former Chair Guzman.
Director Guchenritter.
Director Larson.
I'll support myself.
Also a shock. Director Nicholson.
I support the taller Director Christopher, Director Gutenritter.
By memory, that is Director Guschenritter. And I am a vote for Director Guschenritter. So that is a 6 for Director Guschenritter, 1 for Director Larson. And the nominee with the majority vote is Director Guschenritter. Congratulations, Chair. It is your committee after we get through this next stage. Let's see, pull this up. I will now ask for nominations for committee vice chair. Are there any nominations? Director Guzman.
Thank you. I would actually like to nominate Director Matt Larson for vice chair of this committee. Working with Director Larson, I have seen a keen eye and interest on how we approach the performance review and the performance committee, not just with respect to the general manager CEO, which is a part of the function that we fulfill, but also with a keen interest towards the performance of the entire agency, metrics, KPIs, and doing deep dives into different areas of the agency. He worked on banging that drum pretty loud last year. It got my attention. I promised to listen to everybody on the committee, but it was because of his direct and pointed comment that we should be looking at those more thoroughly in the committee. And given the time that we had and the commitments we needed to keep, it actually impacted a great deal of the work plan. And so, I know that this might surprise everybody because we did not start on the best foot last year, but we ended really well working together. And I have a lot of respect for Director Larson. I do believe that he would make a great vice chair on this committee and drive the work forward. Even though we do not always see eye to eye, Director, I do, and you and I have discussed this, I have a great deal of respect for your opinion and where you come from. And I find our conversations to be riveting because it makes me think about all of these things in a different way. I know that we have a lot of work to do this year, and I would like to see what a new vice chair would be able to bring to that conversation, the work plan in particular, and the discussion of the review of the agency performance metrics and other matters that would come before this committee would provide. Thank you.
Oh,
Sir,
Chair.
you're muted.
Yep. Still muted.
Okay, thank you, Director Guzman. I see Director Kusenritter.
Yes, thank you. It is my pleasure and honor to nominate Director Nicholson as Vice Chair of Performance. Um, Director Nicholson is shown to be a sound quality leader, exemplified by his executive committee contribution last year as secretary. I think a lot of people would call Director Nicholson a go-getter who gets things done, very effective at getting things done and getting group alignment. I think he's a great communicator, to use his own line on me. Some may call him a bridge builder. And then ultimately, as chair of the performance committee, I've thought long and hard about Director Nicholson's strengths and think that he would be a very complimentary vice chair to me as chair. So for those reasons, I nominate Director Nicholson as vice chair.
Are there any other directors that would like to be recognized or do we have any other nominees? I'm sorry. And Director Chandler, do you have a nominee or would you like to speak in favor of other candidates?
I would like to second the nomination of Chris Nicholson. I think Chris has the ability to get things done and is a good worker. He is very amiable to hearing all kinds of sides of the story. And I just believe that he would work really well with the other Chris. So we'd have, if we named out any Chris, anyone would answer. So there you go.
Thank you for the speaking in favor. Board Office Manager Kroll has told me has already offered advice that we do not need a second. So I'll just put that in favor of. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of either of the candidates?
Can I speak on my own?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Director.
I just wanted to say, how much I appreciate Director Gutenritter's, kind nomination, and also I'd like to, thank Director Guzman for his leadership of the committee over the last year. I certainly learned a great deal being on performance last year. I think we have a lot of really critical work to do this year, and I've developed a really close working relationship, a personal relationship with Director Gutenritter, quite frankly, since the first day that he decided to run, and really feel like we work well together. We respect each other. My goal in doing this is really just to be a good lieutenant to Chris. There's a lot of work to do this year on this, and I think in this year in particular. And I want to make sure that he has some amount of time to spend with his young family and to do all of the other things that need to be done, and can focus on the high level work of the committee, and rely on me for whatever grunt work is necessary to make him as effective as possible. So.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. Any other directors that'd like to be recognized? Once, twice? Okay. I would just add one thing from my part. Chair Emeritus, rather than former Chair Emeritus Guzman, I think taught all of us a lot about how this process works. And so his legacy is going to be bringing the 7 new directors up to speed very quickly and helping us be better participants. So I want to recognize that for sure. With Director Nicholson and Director Larson having been nominated as committee chair and opportunities provided to the candidates and their supporters to make respective cases, I'll now proceed to call on each committee member in alphabetical order for their vote. As I call your name, please state the name of the nominee who you support. Director Chandler.
Chris Nicholson.
Director Geisinger.
Chris Nicholson.
Director Gusenritter.
Director Nicholson.
Director Guzman.
Director Larson.
Director Larson.
Myself.
Director Nicholson.
The shorter Nicholson, myself.
And I am a vote for Director Nicholson. So the count is 5 votes in favor for Director Nicholson and 2 votes in favor for Director Larson. Want to congratulate the committee vice chair and thank Director Larson for making this election better. And obviously his contributions are going to be strong on this committee. Now that we have election duties complete, I will ask the newly elected committee chair, Chris Gutenritter, to take over the rest of the meeting. Thank goodness.
Thank you, Chair O'Keefe, and apologies again for my video not working, and then also for how my voice sounds. I've got a scratchy throat, so just bear with me. Hopefully I'll get healthy soon. I would like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your hand, your virtual hand, or press *9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtddenver.com. Mr. Kroll, do we have any hands raised or public comments?
Committee Chair Gutenritter, this is Jack Kroll, Executive Manager of the Board Office. At this time, there are no hands raised, and in anticipation of your subsequent question, there were no emailed comments submitted in advance as public comment.
Thank you. With nobody in the queue, we will close the public comment period at this time. Moving on to other matters. We have one planned item to discuss under other matters, which is our Performance Committee's work plan. In a moment, I'd like to ask GM CEO Johnson to provide our insights, if any at this stage, on the work plan. Before I hand the floor to GM CEO Johnson, I want to take a moment to remind everyone of our typical timeline for approval of the work plan. The process for committee members to provide input on and approve the work plan mirrors the process we used last year. We will take input today on any major themes or items we want included on the work plan. The board office will also solicit input via a feedback form in the coming weeks on items to potentially include in committee work plans. Between now and our next meeting on February 2nd, the vice chair and I will engage with GM CEO Johnson further on the development of the work plan, and we may be in a place to hold a discussion on the draft work plan at the meeting on February 2nd. The board retreat on Saturday, February 7th has a dedicated section to discussing all committee work plans, and we will further refine the work plan then. The committee will approve the work plan at our meeting on March 2nd. Given that overview above, I'd now like to ask GM CEO Johnson for any input she may have on the work plan at this time.
Good morning, all. Deborah Johnson, General Manager and Chief Executive Officer. Relative to the point at hand regarding the work plan, I believe some elements that are most prudent to include are those that are encapsulated in the employment agreement, of which I have in my capacity as the General Manager CEO with that of the Board of Directors of RTD. Relative to having quarterly performance check-ins, I believe it's pertinent that we identify the meeting time with regular cadence at which this group will be convening so we can get those on the work plans. More importantly, many of you are aware that the strategic plan sunsets in August of 2026. There is currently an active solicitation relative to working with a consultancy to help the development of a successor strategic plan. I believe that is paramount as we move forward. And last but certainly not least, that has a direct nexus to what I just stated, is in relationship to the performance of the organization holistically, as outlined with the current strategic priorities of the organization that basically germinate from the strategic priorities. And those deep dives relative to the overarching performance of the organization should be included as regular review relative to the performance, and quite naturally that embeds the core function of the organization, which is transit service delivery. So those are the initial elements in which I will spend time with you, Mr. Chair, as time permits, regarding refining the performance plan for the 2026 year, and keeping in mind that I am approaching this from a vantage point of being collective and cooperative, because as many of you know, not one person can run this organization, and it's a collective effort. So I look forward to the dialogue and the certain elements that are embedded into our core function of the organization as outlined in the RTD Act of 1969, which is delivering mass transit services to this region. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I yield the floor.
Thank you, GM CEO Johnson. Is there any other further discussion on this matter from directors? Vice Chair Nicholson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of the really, I thought, interesting comments that was raised by our newest director, Arcuri, in discussions of the Performance Committee was the notion of having us take a more in-depth look at the performance, not just of the GM and CEO, but of individual departments of the agency, and how those are functioning, not necessarily in the sense of wanting to review or do a performance review of the departments the way that we do for GM CEO Johnson, but to get a better understanding of the work of each of the departments. I think that there's a reasonable point to be made that we are essentially we are responsible for the work of bus and rail operations, for the work of people operations, for the work of everything that's not touched by one of the other committees in terms of their performance reviews. And I think that getting a better feel for whether that's just getting a regular report throughout the year in written form so as not to take up time from the meetings, or just to have the leadership of each of those departments, Dave Jensen or Patrick Proser, or whatever, come in and give a 20-minute presentation on what's happening and the performance metrics that those departments are judging themselves by, I think could be a really interesting use of our time, and I was just intrigued enough by it that I thought I would raise that as maybe something that we could add to our calendar.
Thank you for sharing, Vice Chair Nicholson. I think that might be appropriate to bring up at possibly the February 2nd performance meeting or the board retreat on the 7th. But thank you for sharing that idea. At this time, and GMCO Johnson, you don't have your hand up, but is there anything you'd like to respond with to that?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate that greatly. And while I understand the essence of what was put forward by Secretary Nicholson, I think it's important to recognize, as we qualified them as departments, just pursuant to what's in your board guidelines relative to functional work areas, we work from the vantage point of collective delivery relative to the work units. And while we may have called out rail operations could not exist if in fact we didn't have service planning, doing run cutting, deciding about deployment, how you allocate vehicles and things of the like. So it's more interdependent. As we look at what's happening in maintenance of way, for instance, as we call MOW, we have to look at those collectively. So I would say let's hone in on cross-functional aspects in reference to seeing how something is delivered, because one cannot be done, as I said in my remarks, within itself. And so it's more collective in that approach. And then lastly, what I will indicate, when we were going through different areas relative to the performance, we did look at those in that collective approach. So if we're looking at on-time performance, if you're looking at system reliability, it's quite important that you're looking at preventative maintenance relative to the point that I called out, maintenance of way, for instance, doing their work in order to deliver services. So with that, thank you very much for allowing me to opine. Well, I do want to say I don't think it's not necessary. So let me be clear in reference to what Secretary Nicholson, I think it's not departments. I think we need to look at it more holistically. So I just wanted to close with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Nicholson, do you have a quick response, or is your hand just, okay, you took it down. I will call on Director Guzman next.
Thank you, Chair Guccinritter. I would like to find out either from you or Mr. Kroll, the Executive Manager of the Board Office, if we have thoughts or ideas about the work plan. To whom should we send those, and what is the most expeditious way to get this work done? I just want to make sure that we are fully prepared to have the next step of this conversation. And I will just share with all of you, the work plans run through February. So we are still working on the work plan from last year until February, which means that while you're doing this thinking work and we are doing this exercise, please think and consider what the work plan should look like through February of 2027, because that's the work plan we're working on. Don't be short-termed in this. Make sure that we're considering all of it, because there's a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Director Guzman. That's a good call out on going to a full 12-month work plan. And I'll respond, and Executive Manager Kroll, I'll then defer to you. But my thinking, Director Guzman, on how you would submit work plan ideas is we have a process, we have a form that I believe was developed last year. I think I recommend following that process as a secondary or backup. If you would like to send Executive Manager Kroll and myself an email with that submission, that would be fine as well. But first and primary would be following the form submission process.
As a quick follow-up to that, sorry, before Jack also adds in there, how quickly will we see a review of the responses that directors may have sent in, so that we can all look at what each other's doing? We don't have a great way to collaborate on this except in our public meetings, unless we're making individual phone calls, and I don't want to get into that daisy chaining situation. So I would like to know where everybody's at with it. I know Secretary Nicholson is smiling because he's been working on the collaborative effort with the technology, but we're not there yet. And this is important work that needs to be done. And I think we need to be collaborative about it. So is there an anticipated manner in which the board office will be assisting directors to look into these comments and review them prior to the February 2nd meeting? Thank you. I'll end my questions there.
Okay. Thank you, Director Guzman. Executive Manager Kroll, I'll let you go first, and happy to say something as well after if needed.
Great, thank you. So the board office will distribute the form later this week, and then we will distribute the results of that form out prior to the retreat. I think we have to set a deadline that accommodates all of the committees. The performance committee is in a interesting space here, and that you all are going to meet next prior to the retreat, whereas the other committees won't meet again until after the retreat, which is scheduled for February 7th. And so we will do our best to distribute that and coordinate closely too with the executive office, so they're in the loop as to what's being proposed and on the list for consideration on the committee's work plan. The final thing I'll mention is that the collaboration tool is set to launch on Tuesday, January 20th, and that tool will stay open through the approval of all of the committee's work plans in March.
Thank you for the thorough and clear response, Executive Manager Kroll. Before calling on Director Rusha or Nicholson, I'll just ask, do either of you have a response to what was just said, or is this a new topic?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I will let Vice Chair Nicholson go first, and then next up will be Director Rusha.
So, Mr. Kroll, I'm sure we'll discuss this in the training, but just for reference to the rest of the committee, I know that the test that we're planning on running is to in part to use the collaboration tool for the work plan discussion. So, can you speak a little bit to how we are planning to use that, or what that is going to look like?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Vice Chair Nicholson. So the plan will be to launch the tool again on next Tuesday, January 20th. So a week from this coming Tuesday. And this will be the first time we've used the tool, but my sense is that directors can build off of an existing sense of what the work plan is. So we would want to share out close to that date when it launches, at least a rough sketch of what a work plan could look like, so that directors would have the capacity to respond and build off of that. That being said, we need to give time and space to ensure that what is initially shared out is something that the committee chair, committee vice chair, and primary staff liaison, which for this committee is the GM and CEO, have seen it and are comfortable with the latest iteration of it prior to sharing out and then building upon that.
Thank you, Executive Manager Kroll. Okay, I see the real hand of Director Rusha up. I will call on you, Director Rusha.
Thank you. The real Director Rusha is present. I had an unstable internet connection, so I'm glad I made it back on. So I got up early and I wrote 2 memos, and I'm going to trust that the process will work itself out. I will send those to our Performance Committee Chair and Mr. Kroll. But I spoke with Chair Gutschmider last night about KPIs, and I'm just submitting for the committee's consideration to related to the topic at hand, work plan proposals. One directs review of paratransit KPIs, so beginning with on-time performance and expanding beyond pickup metrics, just to better reflect service quality and customer experience for riders with disabilities. The second directs review of safety metrics, including how PTASP and corrective action plan frameworks may emphasize administrative closure, emphasize administrative closure rather than lasting safety incomes. Both proposals emphasize early engagement with our advisory committees and staff from the GM CEO, alignment with federal guidance, and stronger oversight focused on durable improvements for riders and frontline workers. Again, I wrote that memo this morning. It's pretty brief. There are references. I think it gets to the point, and I will go ahead and submit that to the chair. And then, Mr. Chair, if you have any other feedback for me, I suppose we'll just dialogue in the interim. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rusha. Are there any other matters to discuss? And I have two myself, but I will wait until the end. So I'll first up, Director Geisinger.
This may be one that you have, Chair, but aren't we supposed to decide the weighting on the performance review or move it forward or something? Doesn't it have to be done by the end of this month with the full board?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. And I had individually sent out some correspondence around kind of proposals of what that new relative weighting of the performance assessment components would look like. But I have heard from Executive Manager Kroll that we cannot bring a recommended action at this time on this meeting, and such, we would need to likely schedule a follow-up performance session or I'll leave it at that. We would need to schedule a follow-up performance session between now and the full board meeting. Executive Manager Kroll, I might have not perfectly said that. If you have anything you'd like to clarify, please add at this time.
Thank you, Committee Chair Gutschmidt, Jack Kroll again here. The only other option you would have available to you all is to put this forward through a special board meeting without first going to the committee. But as is stated in your bylaws and in your board operating guidelines, it is always best if items that the board takes action on go first through a committee. So the thinking would be that you all would schedule a special performance committee once there was some kind of alignment amongst and some consensus between board members on any potential changes to that performance assessment framework. And this would also allow for time for you as the newly elected committee chair to engage with GM and CEO Johnson on any potential changes as well.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Please.
Director Guzman, sure, go ahead.
We're not violating any law by having the conversation here. This is other matters. We are in committee. This would be the appropriate place for somebody to make a motion, even if it's on the fly. I understand that it has not been noticed, but there was not a plan from staff or from the board office to agendize this item, but it is something we are on a timeline with, and it is absolutely appropriate to have a conversation here and make a motion and a recommendation to the board without having to schedule additional meetings. It's good that we have both the board chair, O'Keefe here, and yourself now that you've been elected. But we do not have additional days in the month of January to mess around with this stuff. There's a contractual obligation we must meet as a board, and we put ourselves in a liability situation if we do not attend to this. So I flatly reject what was just said, and I am going to make the motion based on the email that we received that we move forward a recommendation to the board that transfers 10 points from the short-term goals back to the core job function, which is what we pay our employee to do. And that is where the emphasis of the work should be placed. We leave the 10 points at the valuation for the agency values, and we reduce the weighting on the short-term goals to 40% of the total evaluation score. And we send that forward as a recommendation so that it is in time for the end of the month. And I'm sorry, I am really passionate about this, y'all, but I'm going to put it all out here now. I could not speak this way as the chair of the committee, but I am passionate that we get this work done on time. It is respectful to our employee. It is respectful to each other, and we do not have time to mess around with this. So unless anybody else is willing to come back here under pain of not showing up, you don't get to vote on anything else the rest of the year, I would suggest we make a motion and move it forward. Would somebody be willing to second that so we can have that discussion in proper order and then send a recommendation to the board?
But before I ask for a second, I guess Executive Manager Kroll, does that align within procedure protocol, or are we okay to move forward?
Thank you. You know, the reality here is that I think it would be a very worrisome precedence to place things before the board for consideration that weren't appropriately noticed. the committee cannot take action unilaterally. So, were you to pass a motion, it wouldn't have any binding effect until the full board were to approve it. But you could imagine, a scenario in which, say, the Finance and Planning Committee next week decided to approve or take action on something related to the budget that wasn't previously noticed. I think it just sets a cumbersome and worrisome precedent for how you all would proceed with your work. And I think, again, a more methodical approach where there is some consensus garnered here within the bounds of an other matters conversation, and then a subsequent action item is prepared and put forward to the board, or excuse me, to the committee for consideration. I think that follows the most prudent course of action, notwithstanding Director Guzman's concerns around the timeline, which are very real. I think it's appropriate to raise the conversation now, and as we have done in the past, we can work diligently to schedule a follow-up meeting that need not necessarily be long, but would be appropriately noticed and would allow for full consideration of any changes that might be brought forward.
Thank you, Executive Manager Kroll. As chair of performance, Director Guzman, I hear your concern. There is timeline concerns. If we don't move forward with any changes, the performance assessment framework would remain as is for 2026. As the newly elected chair of performance, I am inclined to err on the side of caution and lean towards Executive Manager Kroll's recommendation. Again, I know timelines are tight, and I know this would require we meet again as a performance group between now and the larger board meeting. But I would rather err on the side of caution and know that this is more of an exception, and this is just the position we're in with the difficulty of timelines as it pertains to January. So that is. Sure, let me pause.
I'm going to quickly say this. One, I don't care for red herring conversations and rhetoric. Budget is nothing like a contract that has a deadline in it. And so that's an unfair equation from here to finance and planning. And although I understand the concern that Mr. Kroll is bringing up, finance and planning is not under a timeline that is less than 20 days away to complete their work with respect to the budget. And so that would not be able to happen on finance and planning, and it would be ill-advised. Here, we have a deadline that is much closer and looming, and it will be requiring the expedition of getting this work done. For that reason, I am putting this out there and letting you all know we spoke on the phone. Most of us had this conversation. We need to look at it and talk about it. We need to have this conversation, and we need to get it done before the end of the month. January 31st is the last day of the month, and the last day we have to make any adjustments to this as a body. So not only does this committee need to make a recommendation to the full board then needs to meet and consider it. With respect to noticing things, I think that was the language that was used. I don't have the transcript in front of me currently. Yes, of course, we would like to make sure that this is agendized properly. We've had a discussion, a recommendation, and we follow regular procedure. I will own it. We don't do anything during December. That's unfortunate. We finished our last board meeting early in December, and nothing has happened until now. And I'm a member of the body, right? So there's no opportunity to have the recommendation or have the discussion prior to that, because prior to that, we're debating approval of the performance review from the previous year and the budget, which are the two big tasks that the board has all year long in November, and voting on that in early December, then not meeting again until now. So frankly, we've lost an opportunity, and the ball could get dropped if we don't make a motion to move this forward. If you want to call another meeting, Mr. Chair, I'd highly recommend it, but let's get it on the calendar before we end this one, so that we all know when we're supposed to be back here ready to have that conversation. And then while Director O'Keefe is here, are you willing to, Chairman O'Keefe, if you are willing to potentially schedule a special meeting of the full board to deal with this, even as late as January 31st of this year, after the regular board meeting that's already been scheduled, should we need to do that work?
We will accommodate any schedule. I send a recommendation to, or an idea to Chair Guzman, or Gutschenritter, I'm sorry. If you don't mind, Chair, I'm gonna just explain it. One halfway thing you could do is conduct a straw poll where we know generally directionally where the committee would have gone if it was binding. And we would move the item straight to the full board with appropriate notice. And so the committee would be able to convey direction. It would not be a binding vote, but would be rather that directional indication. And then the full board would at least have that when they take the matter up.
Thank you, Chair O'Keefe. I'm gonna go to Director Geisinger, see what you have to say.
Thank you. I apologize. I hadn't seen your email from late yesterday raising the same issue, but it would help me just as a practical matter. It's been 6 months or something since we passed the short-term goals to see what they are. I know there's ridership and customer experience, but actually having them in front of me might help me with this. My inclination, I'd like to at least hear some of the discussion today. My inclination is along the lines of Director Larson, although maybe he wanted to go farther, a different direction. I'd probably support the way it is right now, unless somebody convinces me otherwise. I think that the short-term goals, we've spent a lot of time focusing on them, and I have no problem with the way we have them weighted at this point.
Thank you, Director Geisinger. Director Nicholson. Oh, I'm sorry, GM CEO Johnson, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Recognizing I'm sitting here listening to the dialogue, and the primary aspect of what we're discussing impacts what I do as the leader of the organization and what we have outlined in my employment contract. I would greatly appreciate the professional courtesy of allowing me to be able to engage in the discussion as we talk about what may be happening in private sector, for instance, and what may be opportune relative to the organization as a whole. I heard conversations early on in the meeting that talked about my performance should be in alignment with that of the team in which I lead. I don't have any disagreement with that, but I think we're trying to shoehorn something in due to the fact that there is a looming deadline. And I'd be remiss not to state that we've had 9 amendments to my contract just by nature of the business, the way we conduct it here at the agency. So as we talk about what may be germane, keeping in mind that I'm leading a public sector agency, and it is commonplace quite naturally for the position in which I was held to place a greater emphasis on the core job at hand. I could achieve all types of goals, and if I'm not doing the core job of the agency that involves a myriad elements, then I would be for naught. So I just put that out there because I feel as if this conversation is happening around me, and you all know the manner in which I lead and the competencies that I possess, that I could not sit here and not have my voice be heard relative to the discussion. So I think it would be most prudent to calendar a subsequent meeting whereby there is dialogue, because the contract isn't unilateral, it's two-party. So with that, I yield the floor, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak on the matter.
Thank you, GM CEO Johnson. I will go over to Vice Chair Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair Gutenritter. I have a question for Mr. Kroll or GM CEO Johnson, whoever knows the answer to this. One topic that came up last year was the significance not just of short-term goals, but of long-term goals. One of the largest and most significant issues that I think we are facing right now is in regard to the long-term financial health of the agency and the need potentially for additional long-term funding. That is not a short-term goal. It's not really job performance either. It is a big project that needs constant work over a number of years to move the ball forward, so that in 2028, 2030, 2032, we have a resolution that addresses that challenge. I'd like to actually see us add long-term goals as one of the categories for this, that specifically identifies challenges that we know we are facing that need iterative work that can be measured each year by the board in terms of whether or not we made meaningful progress, toward a solution that would be different than something like a short-term goal on, on time performance or boardings. And I'm wondering if we are allowed not just to modify the weighting in this motion, but to actually, add or remove categories entirely, and then work over the next few months to define what those categories, what that means basically, and how to review those categories. So I don't know who the right person is to present on that, but that's what I'd like to add to the discussion over the next week or two.
Thank you, Director Nicholson. I would, GM CEO Johnson, over to you if you have something to say, please.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for the question, Secretary Nicholson. I think that's a pragmatic way of looking at it, recognizing that I have a little more than a year left on my contract. Ideally, setting forth long-term goals would have been prudent at the outset of the contract in which I currently hold. Whether it's me or whether it's somebody subsequent to me leading this organization, I would recommend that this body look at that holistically when you're setting the terms of the employment contract to garner what might be prudent, because it is customary where you'd have short-term and long-term goals that go hand in hand. What I will say is that recognizing the role of the general manager and CEO relative to looking at the financial stability of the organization as a whole, I want you all to know, just because it's not outlined in a short-term goal, long-term goal, it is something that my team and I have explored, and with the risk of speaking outside of school right now, the team and I spent 6.5 hours on Friday as we looked at various elements relative to what you've outlined exactly, because I think that's our responsibility, quite naturally the boards as well. But as I said at the outset of this meeting, that I believe it's prudent that we work collectively and collaboratively as we talk about what needs to happen for the betterment of the organization, recognizing you all set policy and I and my team implement. I think it's germane to the sustainability of the organization and its financial future that this conversation quite naturally is delved into, and more specifically, it would be very prudent to discuss, I would say from my perspective, at the retreat, so we can all rally around the path forward and what needs to be done over subsequent years. Thank you.
Thank you, GM CEO Johnson. I will I'm going to let Director Larson speak and then go over to Director Ruscia, and then I will have a comment to make. So, Director Larson.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I'm just calling a point of order, and traditionally we have allowed non-committee members who are directors to do that. We have a motion on the table, and we have gotten far away from that motion. So I just wanted to flag that for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. I believe the motioner was Director Larson. Was that you? Are you willing to just temporarily? It was Director Guzman. Are you willing to temporarily take that off the table for us to have this conversation? We can come back to that if necessary.
Yeah, I'm willing to take it off the table. It wasn't seconded anyway, so it wasn't
Right.
in order, which is exactly what Executive Manager Kroll was going to say. So I'm following the conversation. I am concerned that we're not going to get this done on time. So if you all are comfortable just letting this slide and let it go, that's irresponsible in my opinion. We did it last year though, right? And then we had a big blow up at the board meeting. So shots fired, heads up. That's where we're headed. I don't want a repeat of last year. I thought it was nonsense, both as the chair committee and as a member of the board, because I know we can do better if we work together. And with respect to the comments that General Manager CEO Johnson made, that I always include you in the conversations. I did my best last year to ensure that happened. But frankly, as a member of the board, I have to say here a bit of distinction. We're not talking around you. We are having the conversation in plain sight with the public and with you, that this is something we need to address. And I understand that it does include your voice to come in and opine on it, right? But we've had plenty of conversation, you and I. You have said it multiple times over the term of my directorship, that the function and the work that you do is based on the core job function you were hired for. And so I think it would be appropriate to have here. But we've wasted a lot of time discussing around it and not doing it.
Right.
I'll withdraw it, and I'm not trying to be a pain in your butt the first day, Director Guchenritter, Chair Guchenritter, sorry. But I think it's worthy of having the conversation and the discussion, which is what we meet in committee for. So
Right.
done.
Thank you, Director Guzman. My recommendation will be we go on this call, schedule additional time next week to have this continued discussion. I think it needs space for us to have this discussion. I don't think we're going to solve it now. That'll give us time to put together intentional thoughts, and would ask that we come prepared to speak about recommended action and take that to the full board. Executive Manager Kroll, is that something we could get scheduled live on this call? Should we just table that immediately following this call? I'm looking for a my preference would be doing it live if possible, but I don't want to burn through too much time.
Thank you, Committee Chair Guchenritter. You know, a big part of scheduling this meeting is also having GM CEO Johnson available, and so I don't want to speak to GM and CEO Johnson's availability. Certainly, the board office can accommodate a meeting that is mutually agreeable to both the board or both the committee and to GM and CEO Johnson. It would be productive to have a conversation, at least to get some direction on when a meeting might occur. I would say you wrap up the conversation and get some consensus on any potential changes to the performance assessment framework, and then we can move on to a quick conversation around scheduling.
Okay. Thank you, Executive Manager Kroll. Director Larson, over to you.
I'm gonna, I guess, postpone my substantive comment until we have another meeting scheduled, I suppose. But I would love it if the next meeting scheduled was not first thing Monday morning, and I would extend that to all of our meetings. I would love to get that changed. I think it's about the worst time for a meeting for those of us who have other jobs. So that's it.
Thank you, Director Larson. Director Rusha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot my hand was still up. I was going to offer a potential solution to the parliamentary and OML concerns that arose before, but it sounds like the body has sorted it out. I did want to say, though, that our contract and our stated policy, as well as on the record statements, if it doesn't outright say, it strongly implies that the body will consider these things at least annually, and also, and this I think is more explicit, take into account the desires of our general manager and CEO. And so I just wanted to say that I appreciate Director Guzman's points and your concessions, Mr. Chair, when we talk about due diligence and consideration. It does suggest that time will be afforded, and we are short on time. So, but I personally, as a person who will have to vote on this after it comes out of performance, I would like to also know what our general manager and CEO, think would like to do on these matters. And I just want to state on the record that I think it's important for us to remember that we do have our employee in the room, as she noted, and so that will be important to me as I consider it as a member of the general board. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rusha. Okay, lot of conversation and energy on this topic. So my expectation is coming out of this meeting, there will be the board office will follow up with us, align with GM CEO Johnson to make sure that we identify a date time that is available for her, as well as as much of the majority, well, definitely the majority, but as many of the performance committee members as possible, sometime next week. Okay. Anything else on that topic from anyone before moving on? Director Chandler.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I have an absolute hard thing. I cannot be available on next week for a couple of days. I'm traveling, so I just want to put that out so that it's not even considered. I will be gone Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday of next week. So if there's a possibility of having this meeting Monday or Tuesday or even Wednesday, I would appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing that, Director Chandler. Director Geisinger. Oh, I'm sorry, GM CEO Johnson.
Yes, thank you very kindly. I just wanted to share Monday, January 19th is a Regional Transportation District holiday as it honors the memory of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and staff has that as a holiday. So I believe it was important to suggest, since Monday was just mentioned. Moreover, at the risk of speaking outside of school, considering that we do have a OSS committee meeting this week, and agendize just election of the board, perhaps there could be a meeting immediately following the OSS committee or one before. So just thought I could put that forward really quickly. So I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, GM CEO Johnson, for pointing that out. Director Geisinger.
Scheduling issue too. I'm out of town on I texted this to you, but I wanted to out of town on vacation all of next week. It's possible I could attend a short meeting, but it just depends on when it is. Director GM CEO Johnson's suggestion of before the OSS meeting. I think we have our collaboration tool training at 4, but if we could do a short meeting before that or after that before the meeting, I'd be okay with that.
Thank you, Director Geisinger. The board office will follow up, and we will do our best to ensure that we have as many performance committee members as possible on that meeting. And certainly we'll make sure that we have the GM CEO on that call, as it's very pertinent to that position. So that will be coming. Before moving, any final thoughts on that, or otherwise I'm going to move on to the next section. Okay. Are there any other matters to discuss? Okay. Our next scheduled meeting is for Monday, February 2nd, 2026, where we will discuss some committee's work plan and potentially do one of our quarterly key organization performance metrics deep dives. However, that is still to be determined. We may also schedule an additional January meeting, very likely, to discuss and potentially approve changes to the GM CEO performance assessment framework. Any changes to that framework needs to be approved by January 31st, or the current framework remains in effect for this year's assessment cycle. With no other discussion or business, this meeting is adjourned at 9:38 a.m. Thank you.